plane exploded right in front of me. Shit, fuck, no way.
Damn, did you actually get that on camera? Yeah! I just shit myself, guys. Seriously. Fuck! It just exploded right in front of me just now. Literally. I'm honestly scared. Fuck! A living house. Fuck! A living house?
That's it. I'm definitely not afraid of war. That's it. Quiet, quiet.
I'm not afraid. Stay here.
Holy shit, I can't believe what just happened. I actually caught that on camera. Holy shit, that was so incredibly loud. I was not expecting that at all. Holy shit, it really startled me. I can't believe I managed to record that moment. Holy shit, that was unbelievably loud.
Don't get overwhelmed. Everyone hit quickly. Why did you come out? Friends, it's November 27th. And in fact, there have been large-scale strikes on Russia. First of all, let's start with the fact that in Novorossiysk, there was damage. A large landing ship of Project 1171, the Soviet Tapir. In Taganrog, a unique flying laser aircraft, the A-60, was destroyed, one of only two in existence, and most likely, strategic bombers Tu-95MS were also damaged. Cheboksary, Stuap's S-400 air defense sites, the Beriev aircraft plant, drone factories, oil refineries, and military units were all hit. All night from Kerch to Sochi, Russia was attacked by drones and missiles. Reports say that long-range Neptune missiles were in action, and the General Staff of the Armed Forces confirmed strikes on Cheboksary. In Ukraine, the military attacked a plant producing navigation equipment and components for cruise and ballistic missiles at NIR Progress. Let's discuss all of this. Missile and drone strikes on that long-range Neptune missiles were in action, and the General Staff of the Armed Forces confirmed strikes on Cheboksary. In Ukraine, the military attacked a plant producing navigation equipment and components for cruise and ballistic missiles at NIR Progress. We'll discuss all of this.
Missile drone attacks with Roman Svitan.
Roman, welcome. Where shall we start? What stands out to you about the strikes?
Novorossiysk, of course. Moscow and Novorossiysk. We won't reach Moscow until we either have ballistic missiles or a large number, about 1,000 of cruise missiles and drones, because otherwise we can't break through Russian air defenses. But Novorossiysk is sacred. Why is Novorossiysk sacred? Because to get in with drones, Novorossiysk is a key Russian city that can be attacked from the sea with drones, unlike Moscow. We currently possess the capability and the necessary resources to approach land from the sea without encountering any significant problems or obstacles from the Russian side. In fact, there is already an entire video sequence available, and it is quite a serious and substantial one, which clearly shows and demonstrates how their Panzer air defense systems are actively firing at our designated targets. This footage provides undeniable evidence of their defensive actions against our operations. What was attacked? Let's start with the Baryshov landing ship, Project 1177. The Soviet Tapir, one of only 3 left in existence, is reporting. How serious is this? It was hit, and was it also drones? The floor is yours. Well, it was definitely drones because it's quite far from Novorossiysk for missiles to reach, so most likely it was drones. The Tapir is indeed a large landing ship that can land directly on an unprepared shore, so in principle this is quite a good catch. So this one has been taken out. The Tapir, our forces have been hunting it for a long time. As for the damage, the patient is alive, but his health will never be the same. That's for sure. The Tapir, our Ukrainian security services have been after it for a long time, and it's with their help that such things are resolved. They have many concerned informants who make it possible to prepare for what is coming up next in order to get ready.
the execution of a combat mission.
At a great distance and to carry it out. So the Tapir didn't sink, but I'll say it again, its health won't be the same anymore. Roman Lvovich, as I understand it, the S-400 air defense unit, and not only that, were also attacked. We also attacked it there in Novorossiysk. This is a general attack. That is, first the drones come in, they take out, as they say, like close the eyes, and then you can do whatever you want. Well, for a certain period of time. A properly prepared attack, aviation specialists definitely participated in preparing the attack.
Everything was precisely timed. First, they struck the S-400, then the Tapir landing ship, and finally the Cheboksary oil terminal. Roman Nikolaevich, you are in charge of Cheboksary.
We attacked it again, one of Russia's largest oil terminals. This is the second strike. How serious is the damage now? It could handle nearly 40 million tons of oil per year, a major loss. Well done to the security service, and many of our special services were directly involved. The Air Force also participated. Several oil transshipment terminals were damaged. Again, within a day or two, I think the General Staff, after decoding the operational monitoring data, will confirm the actual damage. The Air Force participated in this attack. Several oil transshipment terminals were damaged. Again, within a day or two, I think the General Staff, after decoding the operational monitoring data, will confirm the actual damage. Overall, the attack was quite successful. Yes, indeed, it was attacked for the second time already. I think they won't stop until it's completely destroyed. Some Ryazan oil refinery has stopped, and the Saratov refinery has been shut down. Malyuk won't let go of it. Malyuk is like a bulldog. If he latches onto something, if he's given something to grab onto, he won't let go until he tears it off. He won't unclench his jaws. That's why you can write off Novorossiysk now. Well, for some time in the near future, I think their security service, the CSO, will be tormented by Kolkontrik and Malyuk. Novorossiysk has stopped, with Malyuk and their security service responsible. Naturally, with the help of a wide range of special services that are available in our daily lives.
The General Staff officially reports that we struck 3 key components of Russia's southern logistics. Cheboksary, S-400, Topsy, Gelendzhik, and now they're writing that in Cheboksary, oil loading stands have already been hit, as well as the equipment for loading and unloading oil into tankers, and the pier equipment, naturally, with the help.
Within our organization, there is a diverse array of special services available, each designed to address particular needs or challenges that may arise. These services can range from technical support and consulting to specialized training and exclusive resources, all tailored to provide targeted solutions. In order to achieve our objectives efficiently, it is important to focus our efforts on a specific subset of these offerings. Typically, this means identifying and prioritizing about 10 to 15 of the most relevant special services. The selection process involves evaluating current goals, available resources, and the unique requirements of the situation at hand. By carefully choosing which services to emphasize, we can ensure that our actions are both effective and aligned with our overall strategy, ultimately leading to better outcomes for everyone involved. Realistically, of course, reaching those tunnels would completely stop all traffic from Novorossiysk, and the Novorossiysk Black Sea Fleet would have to look for a nice cozy spot somewhere else. Well, I'd recommend the optimal option for them is somewhere next to the cruiser Moskva. It's warm, quiet, no one bothers you, definitely somewhere around there. Comrade.
Gorky, Tuapse oil refinery. If those tunnels are reached, Novorossiysk traffic stops and the fleet must find a new home, maybe near the cruiser Moskva. Roman Grigorievich, bars drones hit Tuapse oil refinery, causing fires.
An operational drone. So you can reach Tuapse, including with drones. Now, jet-powered ones have started to perform quite well. An operational drone with a jet engine, a turbojet engine. Most likely, it's got a turbofan engine, a dual-circuit turbojet. Depending on the fuel it carries, it can travel several hundred kilometers. At least it managed to rattle its way to Tuapse, if you can call it that, or rather, whistle its way there, because a turbojet engine doesn't rattle, it whistles. So with that kind of whistling sound, Russians will be going to bed and waking up because the production of these Barcelonas has already been put on stream. Yes, this drone is still relatively short range, just a few hundred kilometers. So it's not at the strategic or operational level, but nevertheless, it fulfills its purpose. By the way, most likely it was this very drone that the Panzer missile was chasing near Tuapse, which simply the Panzers simply missed the approach from the sea, which means they were flying at extremely low altitudes. We can say that our winged vehicles, which are carrying out combat missions, can fly if under the radio horizon at altitudes up to 30 meters. That is, above 30 meters, the RWR, radar warning receiver, on an aircraft starts to indicate illumination, so up to about 30 meters is likely the limit. Moreover, they also had to cover in total several hundred kilometers by traveling over the sea.
Roman Yurievich, also Gelendzhik, Sochi, there was air defense operating there. Was everything just heading south, or were there also diversions there? Most likely they were. That's a very good indicator, a very good one, especially since they
also had to cross hundreds of kilometers of sea. Roman Nikolaevich, Gelendzhik, and Sochi had air defense. Was everything just heading south, or are there key military sites? Gelendzhik and Sochi have Russian anti-aircraft missiles and radar stations. For example, to cause damage, Novorossiysk and Tuapse also had to be hit. In addition to the S-400 systems near Novorossiysk, there are also ones near Sochi and Gelendzhik. So the radars there had to be taken out or at least disabled, meaning their operation had to be stopped. There are mechanisms for this. For example, dipole reflectors are used, and some of our drones are equipped with electronic jamming systems. So our attack is actually quite complex. That's why I say it's clear here that there is a jammer involved. This is the approach of true aviation specialists.
Aviation specialists are involved in these attacks, developing the aviation component to break through Russian air defenses, which is yielding results. Roman Igorovich, Taganrog was also hit. Reports say we destroyed the unique A-60, Russia's main asset, a flying laser complex based on the Il-70. There are only two of these in the world.
This rare IL-76 based aircraft used for laser experiments had a nose bulge and was destroyed in Ukraine. Only a few existed, and it served as a laboratory, not a standard laser plane. Experiments with the further use of a laser gun in the troposphere, that is in the upper layers of the atmosphere, as far as the IL-76 could reach. In fact, the tasks there were quite diverse, ranging from ground-based laser strikes to attempts to reach low-orbit satellites. That means satellites in low orbit fly at about 100 kilometers right at the edge of the atmosphere. And by the way, mainly there. There are also American satellites hanging there. So it was quite a formidable topic if it had moved forward. This was being developed by the Soviet Union, but as you understand, what the Soviet Union developed, Russia simply can't handle now. As far as I know, the last time this plane took to the air was in 2016. Again, for the purpose of continuing those tasks. They wanted to see if it made sense to keep pursuing this research. As I understand it, they didn't make a final decision on it. Well, and specifically, such a SMI. They definitely haven't been able to use it now, but it could. Our drone forces have ended this aircraft. It's unlikely they'll revisit laser weapons in the troposphere, upper atmosphere, or space. They haven't been able to use it now, and we've put a permanent stop to the Russian laser program related to the upper atmosphere. In short, they have nothing left in this area.
And of course, naturally, when we talk about Taganrog, everyone is discussing the situation with the two 95 MS bombers, which may have been damaged at the moment of the strike. Inside the hangar were strategic bombers undergoing modernization. The cost of this modernization program is reported to be $270 million for 6 aircraft. The work was being carried out in Ryazan and in Taganrog. And in general, the fact that we were able to destroy even one such aircraft or several is a tremendous blow. Roman Yakovlevich, the floor is yours.
They struck at the shelters, but what exactly was in those shelters is still unclear. But at the very least, there should have been an A-100 aircraft there. This is an improved version, much improved, in fact, an advanced version of the A-50. In other words, it's a flying radar with longer range detection systems, almost up to 800 kilometers, roughly like the NATO AWACS. So they've managed to bring it to that level, but if we manage to damage it, I think we can write it off for good as well. They won't be able to get that kind of aircraft airborne again. And of course, the 295. Lately, the Russians have been having problems with it. The thing is, at one point, they overestimated their capabilities. They mounted 4 pylons on the 295's wings, each capable of carrying 2 Kh-101 missiles. It's a heavy missile. It's one thing to have 6 missiles inside the fuselage and a rotary launcher for the Kh-55, which is what the 295 was originally designed for. But it's a whole different story to load its wings with 8 more Kh-101 missiles, which are not only bigger, but also heavier than the Kh-55s. And so they started having major complaints, specifically about the structural modifications to the fuselage and wings. That's why the 295s are now lined up waiting for modernization and restoration. They will either be modified, or at the very least, they'll be addressing the issues specifically related to these structural problems. And naturally, apart from Taganrog, there's simply nowhere else to repair them. There's just nowhere else. The maintenance procedures are strictly defined. Overhaul and maintenance work are strictly assigned to certain certified factories. The only plant they have for the 295 is, in fact, Taganrog. It just so happens that it's close to us. It's literally within arm's reach, as they say, to break through the Russian air defense in our Donbass. And there it is, Taganrog. Good evening, we're from Ukraine. So that's more or less how the security services, the drone forces of Magyar operated. That's why Magyar also says, good evening, we're from Ukraine. Don't pay too much attention to his call sign.
Roman Igorovich, regarding Taganrog as well, we've attacked a significant number of military factories there. They're mentioning the Beriev plant, Atlant Aero, and Molnia. And they're saying that for some reason the attack was carried out not only with Bars drones, but also with Neptune missiles. I'd like to hear your opinion on this. That the Beriev Center is the hub for modernization, repair, and testing of aircraft, Atlant Aero, and Molnia, which manufactures drones, and the Molnia plant, which develops those very strike drones. It was reported that there was a series of explosions, detonations, and large fires there.
The thing is, the Bars is a missile drone, you could call it that, but its warhead is small, up to 100 kilograms, depending on its flight range. That is, if you increase the fuel, for example, the warhead size is reduced, or vice versa, at least in terms of weight. Well, and the Neptune is the Neptune. It has a good warhead ranging from 150 to 350 kilograms, again, depending on the type of missile used. And it can reach, when the Neptune comes into play, it's no joke. That is, first of all, it's a high precision missile, and our Luch Design Bureau has a certain know-how when it comes to target guidance. Machine vision, as it's called, is not affected by electronic warfare at all. The Russians kept increasing the power of their jammers so much that within a 100-kilometer radius, at the very least, women started leaving because there was just a crowd of men and nothing else. After those jammers, just imagine the level of radio emission there. But it still didn't make any difference. So the missiles come in, accomplish their combat mission, like with those chemical plants, the factories producing certain types of weapons, plus Beriev, that is the Scientific and Production Association in Taganrog. Taganrog is actually quite a serious military hub at the moment, and back in the day, it was also a center of the mining and metallurgical industry, with quite a few enterprises that produced equipment for the mining and metallurgical industry. And now practically everything there has been converted to military production naturally for us. Well, it turns out to be a paradise. Everything is at our fingertips. As soon as we had enough missiles of the same Neptune class, and now the Bars have appeared, they are practically in their element. But if you treat them to something, they won't just leave in the end. I just sit down, and that's how it sounds.
But also Crimea, occupied Crimea, is an important topic for us. I've been watching, and literally for the past 3 days, it's been a constant series of explosions. For example, the Telegram channel Crimean Wind. Well, almost every night it's Jankoy, Kerch, Kvariskoye, Feodosia. This means that we are constantly striking at depots, at Russia's logistics, at the supply infrastructure of the group in the southern direction, and at thermal power plants. The floor is yours.
And what we've been talking about for about half a year now, where it's necessary to use drones and in general anything that flies, meaning aerocycles. After the Russians' air defense density reached such serious levels, it became a major problem for us to break through it. From the sea, they can't deploy air defense systems there, or rather they could back when they had a fleet and it was drifting around the sea like manure in an ice hole. But now the entire Russian fleet is beyond Mozhaisk. The sea is free of surface-to-air missile systems and radar systems. Moreover, they once tried to deploy radar systems and echo sounders on oil and gas platforms. The Air Force destroyed them. The GUR did a good job for us. The Navy did a good job. They drove the Russians out. And now their access from the sea to Crimea, and by the way, also to Novorossiysk, is practically open. And naturally, it's almost as if it's meant to be. In other words, there are enough strike assets on the wing. The air component, the aviation component is now being used against Crimea. Let me repeat once again, we've been talking about this for several years. As soon as we have an air component, we'll be able to sweep through Crimea from end to end. And now we're seeing this happen, but aviation hasn't even come into play yet. So far, it's only drones operating there. If the destruction of air defenses in Crimea is increased, then it's possible that aviation will be deployed next, and aircraft will start operating over Crimea. But remember, we didn't just teach the Russians to swim freestyle breaststroke and dog paddle for nothing. Well, they can also take mattresses from the kids, inflate them, and paddle away on those. Well, to each their own.
Roman Ilyich, remind me, was there or is there a brewery in Cheboksary? Because this morning when I started reading about the strikes, for some reason everyone keeps talking about the brewery. Is it located there or not?
Well, believe me, there are breweries in every village in Russia. And so in Cheboksary, there's not just one brewery, but in Cheboksary, there's a serious military facility and they managed to hit it. There was probably a brewery nearby and it got hit too. So the Russians have a big problem, and it's exactly about beer. I've said it so many times. We need to set strategic targets for ourselves. Breweries, Russian breweries. Believe me, as soon as we start working on this front, Russia will simply cease to exist. Just like that, down to zero.
That's exactly why I wanted to start with this, about the strike. Why? Because at first Russian media reported that the Russians were crying, saying, just not the breweries anywhere but there, because for them it's a real stress. And then, accordingly, information comes from the general staff that the Ukrainian Armed Forces attacked these targets. A factory producing navigation equipment and components for cruise and ballistic missiles called Progress. There they have modules like Kometa, which are used in kamikaze drones such as Shahed, as well as in missiles for the Iskander-M and Kaliber systems, and in OMPK modules for Aviabond. And so we attacked this factory. Roman Igorovich, please go ahead.
It has already been hit multiple times. Well, for example, if we take, say, the same as for Russian Gerbers, they mostly use Russian and Chinese parts, mainly Chinese ones, Chinese servos, systems, that is the components and assemblies of the flight module itself. But for example, the circuit boards, the same antennas, those are actually from the world of Western technology. It's quite far, but still within reach, especially when intelligence agencies get involved. So in fact, it is the intelligence agencies that carry out these strikes, because to halt the technological production process, you need to know exactly which workshop to hit. And since the area is quite large, you have to identify these key points, so a certain amount of work is done. With the help of our concerned local informants from the intelligence services, there is specific target designation, and then the combat mission is carried out. So Pavnir Progress has already been hit for the second time, at least, if not the third. I think with another strike, they will eventually shut down its production. Then the Chinese will have to go into hiding. Finally, they'll admit that it's Gerbera. Geran is the Chinese Sunflower 200. And fully made in China, they will supply these sunflowers. After that, we'll have the opportunity to carry out the same kind of operations against Chinese factories. And there are 1.5 billion confidants. Believe me, the security service, the GUR, the foreign intelligence service, they'll find someone among them. They'll find someone who will help us. Of course, our agents will have to carry out the operation right in front of everyone. After all, the facial expressions there are quite distinctive. Well, I think that's just how it is. Maybe acting like a sleepy comrade, someone might even find a confidant.
Roman Lenkovich, now let's talk about the situation at the front. Everyone is discussing, unfortunately, that the situation in the Zaporizhzhia direction is getting worse. I'd like you to comment on that.
How long have we been talking about this? Half a year? Yes. The first objective for the Russians in the summer campaign of 2025 was to expand the land corridor. We've talked about this in every broadcast since spring, summer, we've been saying this constantly, expanding the land corridor. And that means capturing the left bank part of Zaporizhzhia region and the western part of Donetsk region. So now they've reached Pokrovsk. They're trying to make some moves there, and they've advanced towards Zaporizhzhia, especially since they've realized that it's impossible to break through from south to north across the arc roads. Not in Huliaipol from the same Chernihivka and Polohi, not in Orikhiv from the Tokmak side. It just doesn't work. They move from east to west. That is, yes, they spent a long time advancing those 30 to 40 kilometers, but nevertheless, they practically got into our rear in the Huliaipol area and are now trying to continue this movement along the arc roads towards Zaporizhzhia. In other words, they're coming out onto the road, onto the Donetsk-Zaporizhzhia highway right around the Pokrovsk area. Remember how many months we've been talking about this? That the Russians are advancing both on Pokrovsk and on Pokrovsk. This is right on the road to Zaporizhzhia. It's north of Huliaipol. And now the Russians reaching Pokrovsk is an attempt to cut off our main fortified areas on the Zaporizhzhia front and then move into the rear towards Zaporizhzhia. That's the problem we're facing. Again, for at least more than half a year, we've been talking about what needs to be done to prevent the Russians from advancing, from developing an offensive operation in the Zaporizhzhia direction to set up a line of security forces. We've talked about this a billion times. Remove the exemptions from the security forces, assign 30% of the armed forces of Ukraine, 100,000 troops. If we now bring our newly created, albeit belatedly, they should have been created earlier, but at least they're created now, corps up to 100% of their personnel, we can stop the Russians. Their positions there aren't very good. The only thing they have is this so-called creeping offensive, and that's only because they outnumber us in personnel. If you deploy 1,100 along the line of contact, our front is about 1,200 kilometers, but the active or hot front is roughly 300 to 400 kilometers. So 100,000 will be enough to reinforce this direction and stop the Russians. And during this time, the drone forces, air forces and naval forces, the security service, foreign intelligence service, main intelligence directorate and special operations forces will be hitting Russian TV, destroying the Russian economy. That's what we need to do. Why hasn't the exemption from government service and law enforcement been lifted yet? Why haven't they been sent? Well, only one thought comes to mind. They're just blatantly handing over Donbass and Zaporizhzhia to the Russians as they wanted. What other reason could there be? Roman Ilyich.
For the finale, Ukrainska Pravda claims that the Russians control most of... In Pokrovsk, the Vostok group described the situation in the city. According to the publication, Ukrainian positions remain mainly only on the northern outskirts of Pokrovsk, Donetsk region. In fact, that's where the line of combat engagement runs, as stated in the article. The floor is yours.
Well, if you look at Pokrovsk, you'll see there's a railway that, roughly speaking, runs from Donetsk to Dnipro to Pavlograd, and it passes through Pokrovsk. So it divides Pokrovsk into two parts. That's the southern part, south of the railway. The Russians control the southern part, and the northern part is controlled by us. These are the heights, the elevations right in front of Pokrovsk. In fact, you could say there are two of them in the Pokrovsk area. The Krasnoyametska mine to the west, which we control. It's about 10 kilometers west of Pokrovsk and the northern part of Pokrovsk. So the Pokrovsk line is being held. But the situation is very difficult, and it will remain this difficult as long as the Russian pincer, the northern one, keeps looming over our positions in Pokrovsk and Mirnohrad. Something needs to be done about it. But again, what can be done? We need to unravel it, stop them with flanking strikes from aviation and artillery, and wear down the Russians. All the more so, this can be done in winter. Right now, the Russians have a big problem. They can't completely push us out of Pokrovsk. And that means the Russians' northern pincer is also in a kind of semi-encirclement, just like our troops in Pokrovsk, Mirnohrad. The only difference is that we're in urban buildings, while the Russian northern pincer is out in the open field. And in the open field, they can be taken apart, especially with long-range strike systems, starting from FPV drones and up to aviation. So there is such an opportunity with artillery, especially if we have cluster munitions. If someone has, let's put it gently, gifted them to us, and there are enough of them, we just need to request them. Right now, with cluster munitions, this entire Russian pincer can simply be destroyed. And then, while it won't be possible to restore the status, at least we can hold the line from Pokrovsk to Kostiantynivka. In other words, we need to push them back beyond that highway. That was at one time the third line of defense, which they crawled over during the summer. Again, we showed and talked about this so many times. And we have a great military political leadership that rushed to defend Kyiv from the Kursk magnetic anomaly. That's also a little joke to end the stream.
Dear viewers, please like this video. Roman Hryhorovych and I discuss current political events 3 times a week. The well-known military analyst Roman Svitan. Roman Hryhorovych, thank you very much. See you this Friday.
Goodbye.